Hello, everyone, and thank you for tuning in to the Multi-Chain Infrastructure Summit. As one kickoff sessions for our summit today, we'd love to go into one of the highlight scaling solutions from the Rollup ecosystem. And here we have one of the most prominent guests, Eli, who is co-founder and president of Starkware. Great to have you, Eli.
Thank you, Shike. Great to be here with you and happy to talk a little bit about scalability and rollups.
Awesome. So let's dive right in. Perhaps it would be great to illuminate us with a quick kind of like journey of Starkware, because I understand this is one of the oldest kind of projects in the rollup and scaling space, coming right out and supported by Ethereum Foundation from the get-go. So we'd love a little bird's eye view to summarize it all.
Right. So we co-founded the company in 2018, which is almost 5 years ago. It was actually just the end of 2017. It was the height of ICO season. The company spinned out of research, or is based on research, 30 years of math. I've been doing that research for something like 10, 15 years prior to the founding of Starkware. So it's based on very deep mathematical principles. We are four co-founders, Uri Kolodny, co-founder and CEO, Professor Alessandro Chiesa, who's now an EPFL, and Michael Ryabtsev, Dr. Michael Ryabtsev, who was my PhD student at the time. I was a professor at the time, and based on research. Now, when we started, we said our company is going to be helping solve scalability. And in 2017, when we went around and we're going to solve it using, what is now called validity technology, but and when we went around and said that's what we're going to do, people were like, didn't believe, or like said, but there's no scaling problem. And we said, guys, if you believe blockchains are going to succeed, well, there's going to be a very big scaling problem. So this was 5 years ago. Now our vision and premonition has proven to be correct, and we've been at it for many years, helping scale Ethereum.
Awesome. And of course, to scale or a technology, it helps to kind of go basics and understand actually what are the components and what are the limitations, and therefore where can we kind of either or unbundle some of these components, right? So Eli, with your, I would love to then go into like, what do you think are the components of a blockchain systems are we kind of innovating on or unbundling?
Okay, so the main, I heard someone say that blockchain as a technology on every parameter does worse than previous things, but for one thing, but it's one very important thing, and that one thing is the base of trust. If you think about something like the banking or financial system, it is operated by a very small set of people, a very exclusive set of people that you and I probably cannot join easily. Whereas blockchains are based on an inclusive peer-to-peer network, which basically says verify everything. So everyone should be verifying everything and not trusting it. So this is an amazing technology that I'm sure people will appreciate. Is much fairer, much better in many, in many aspects, just on the basis of being so decentralized and inclusive. However, it has very limited scale. And the reason it has limited scale is because in order to be inclusive and allow anyone with their laptop to join and participate and verify everything that's going, you must have the rate of transactions and the amount of computation be very limited, because many people who are part of blockchain don't have very powerful computers. So because of this most crucial innovation of blockchain, which is an inclusive base of trust, verify, don't trust, and everyone is invited to the protocol, because of that, you have very limited scale.
Awesome. And so in order to then scale, right, what then is Starkware doing that is on the base layer of what are we adding on top, or what are we changing out here?
Yeah, so a good way to think about a blockchain is to think about as a very trustworthy computer that's replicated many places across many places, a lot of redundancy. Everyone's like running the same computer program at once, but it's very slow. So now the question is, what do we ask this computer program to do? In the current system, you basically ask it to just go and transact one transaction after the other and do everything, like mint NFTs, change accounts in order to transfer money. This is too slow. We are saying, oh, let us use, especially Ethereum. You can't do this on Bitcoin, but on Ethereum you can do this because it allows any computation. So we're suggesting, let's use this computer, this very scarce resource, to do something else, and that is to verify a cryptographic Stark proof of validity. And what happens is the proof of validity asserts the correctness of a vastly larger amount of computation. So you can think of it as this: we're saying, let us use this very important computer to sort of randomly inspect and check on computations that are done elsewhere, but in a way that is assured to find any glitch and anything that is imperfect in the computation. And thereby you get just much greater scale of computation by just inspecting things rather than executing them yourself.
Right. So now on Ethereum, we just need to verify these validity proofs that they all have been done correctly. And so what we need as a rollup here is to then firstly do the computation of all the transactions, right? And then we need to then generate these proofs, and then we can finally publish them. And when we do that as well, there's also, before that, there's also the data that's required to then like perform all those computations. Understanding with Starkware, we actually move all of those away from the Ethereum base layer, and hence all of those need to be handled by some of Starkware, and there are some differences we call like the StarkX, StarkNet, and even various shades in between, which are then what we call like the Lithium Volition. It is actually quite interesting that we start off with these very application specific or like more limited versions of the rollups, which do have their own like focus functionality. Shall we go there and see like how did that start as a starting point, and what are some differences or design choices we made with the early StarkX adopters?
Yeah. So this takes us back like 3 or 4 years ago. Again, we were so Starkware. We're proud to be probably number one in innovation and leading this whole space of validity rollups. So including, inventing many of the technological and cryptographic components and being the first to bring them to the world. We've also invented a large number of other things that everyone, the industry is using today, things like the Validium data availability model, Volition, which you mentioned. We have some other pretty amazing inventions that right now only we are using, but I'm sure others are going to pick up, things like shared proving, the SHARP system, in which you can pack together many different computations and get like this savings like you get when you use public transportation. And Cairo, the first Turing complete language used in production in a validity rollup on Ethereum. So many of these things, we're proud to have invented, and now the community is using. Very early on, it was extremely complicated to build Stark systems for general computation. So we just picked one application and we said, let's build a product on that. And that is the StarkX system. So we started really by hand writing down all of the cryptography and math that's needed in order to support spot trading, transfer of assets on Ethereum, minting, self-custodial trading, and perps. And this is the StarkX system. It is now used in production by 7 customers. Some of the notable ones are DYDX for perps. Apex is another one using perpetual trading that just launched recently and is doing very, very well. And then in the NFT market, there is So Rare and Immutable X, and there are a few others as well. So by now we have a long list of customers that is growing, that are using this very dedicated system that basically, again, it can. So I'll give you one example. If you were to mint NFTs using a block of Ethereum, you could fit in roughly 150 mints. Whereas for Immutable X, one of our NFT customers, we've time and again minted batches of 600,000 NFTs per batch and put the proof of those 600,000 mints within less than 1/3 of a block of Ethereum. So we could pack millions of mints of NFTs inside. So this is what StarkX gives you in terms of scale. 4 orders of magnitude higher scale on top of Ethereum in a working production system used today by 7 customers in production and a growing list of those coming on.
Wow. So 4 orders, I mean, we're looking at like 1,000 times like scalability. Or you can think of it as like a 99.99% reduction in the cost
Yeah.
or space data required in order to execute and
Yes, and if I may, I just want to say that everyone's talking now after this whole FTX implosion. What's the next thing? How do we make customers safer, and yet give them all the convenience of trading or interacting with blockchain as they should? So the best solution, the safest, is to do things self-custodially, and that's precisely what StarkX gives for trading, for spot trading, for transfers. So I urge the listeners to go out if they want to trade self-custodially. Check out things like Rhino, Canvas, DYDX, and same thing with NFTs. These technologies literally prevent things like the FTX implosion.
Absolutely. And in fact, because it's an application specific kind of environment, you can even customize it, right? For example, with immutable, so making it gasless. So you don't need this tokens to pay for every single transaction and only pay for whenever you are trading this NFTs. And with the OIDX as well, the super high scalability and the throughput that they require. If I may just point out one thing here with the OIDX, there is that they at moving the cost for their own application chain, where they pull the validators and like determine like even more like parameters that they can customize there. Just curious, like how did this happen, and like what were the considerations there, and were they learning? So are you going to adapt some of the technologies or build new things because of that?
So this is a question more that one should ask them, meaning what were their considerations? I think there were a lot of thoughts around decentralization in light of all kinds of regulatory aspects. I should say that, I think DYDX have shown that they're very, very innovative and a very strong technological team. So I'm sure that if they put their mind to doing something, they'll do a very good job. We are sticking with Ethereum. We think the best way to go forward is to not move to like a side chain or to a monolithic chain, but rather be where all of the liquidity and everything is happening. But and by now as I said, there's already Apex is another perpetuals live in production, and I think more are going to join. So we'll see a variety of solutions. Some of them go on monolithic chains, which is the current path that DYDX is exploring. Others will stick around on Ethereum. We're sticking around on Ethereum and supporting that. So that's our strategic vision.
Yes, and we fully embrace this kind of like decisions and that like approaches, right? And in part,
yes,
makes Web3 like that, the permissionless free market of decisions. At the same time, I think we do make certain decisions ourselves on like where do we focus on and crafts our future, right? One of our predictions here is that as more applications get volume, they're going to want to have their own chain, like what we see with many of the StarkX players, like Immutable X. We've seen games like Axie Infinity set up their own chain. Other ecosystems have these various concepts of like subnets, whatever you want to call it. It is almost. I'm curious to actually understand from that perspective, when we have this advanced concept of like application specific, customized, flexible. Now we're actually going to a general competition environment with Starknet. So what kind of like prompted that shift and that to take for you to take that next step, and what are we hoping to achieve with Starknet as opposed to the StarkX customization?
So the story of how Starknet came about has a middle step, which is the invention of Cairo. So what happened is, as I said, when we built the StarkX systems at first, we did this by hand. It's a little bit like designing a computation by connecting transistors and gates. So it is doable. This was done in the early days of computers, but it's very, very daunting and complex for humans to be able to craft very complicated computations this way. So the next thing was that our team invented the Cairo, which is this very minimalistic programming framework, both a virtual machine and a programming language. So it's minimalistic in the sense that it is very lean, has a very small instruction set, but at the same time, it's extremely flexible and powerful. It is Turing complete, has function calls, random access to memory, and a whole bunch of other things. So it's powerful enough to support general computation. And then the next thing was that we started rewriting systems in this language, and we saw that it's convenient enough that you can write any kind of program in it. Then we said to ourselves, oh, wait, so why limit it only to Starkware's systems? This is a tooling environment. This ability to prove the correct execution of any computation and verify it at an exponentially lower cost on Ethereum, we said this is a technology that just with our limited number of engineers inside Starkware, we're not going to be able to harness. There must be a better way. And we did a few rounds of thinking, how do we allow the world to use this kind of innovation, to be able to harness Stark proofs and their exponential speed up to scale up Ethereum in a way that anyone can use it. And the right way to do it was through a validity rollup, which is basically, to developers, it feels very much like another blockchain. So like a monolithic chain or a competing L1, it might feel this way, but actually everything you do there is ultimately relying on the security of Ethereum, because transactions there are then proved correct and validated by Ethereum, and you need this validation in order to get the security. So Starknet is basically making accessible all of this mathematical and engineering innovation that was residing inside Starkware, and allowing the whole world to use it and scale Ethereum this way.
Awesome. And one of the ideas that has come up is that when you are able to then scale and reduce costs and data by like you said, 4 orders of magnitude, then new types of use cases are now possible on Starknet that were not possible on Ethereum, right? And would love to explore some of those. I think you've mentioned before like AI applications, right? So we'd love to highlight some of those and any other wacky ideas that have come up.
Yeah, so first of all, I'll go over some very non-wacky ideas that everyone who loves blockchains knows we have a problem with it. For instance, why can't we buy our morning coffee or our groceries with using a blockchain? Well, we know the answer. There's not enough scale, right? I'm now actually speaking from Starknet CC in India, right? Population over 1 billion. If you wanted people here to transact, even each one does one transaction per day on a blockchain, this is way too much for any of the existing things. So I just want to say that one of the main use cases I think we'll see from Starknet is it will be able to deliver truly global scale for even the mundane things that everyone agrees blockchain should embrace, like just micropayments. If you go back to Satoshi's white paper and read the motivation, his motivation there is to deal with micropayments. Now, we still haven't achieved that. If transaction costs between $1 to $20 when the system is clogged, you have a problem of scale. So the first thing I want to emphasize, and this is also something that even big enterprise solutions who are talking to us a lot understand this. If you want to take any meaningful business on a global scale and make it use blockchain, you're going to need Starknet. You just can't do it on a blockchain. So that's one area that I think is going to be very dramatically different in Starknet, and we'll start to see much more adoption for blockchain. Then there are, as you said, some of these wacky ideas, AI, much more gameplay on the blockchain, even more elaborate DeFi protocols, proofs of humanity. And finally, I just want to mention that as we've seen with Ethereum, the things that went ballistic and suddenly became a big thing were, at least to me, completely mysterious, and I couldn't forecast them. So things like DeFi Summer, NFTs, CryptoKitties, some of these big things. I remember when I heard of them, I said, wait, why? What? So probably some of the funky things that are going to happen on Starknet are things I'm not going to try and predict.
Absolutely, yeah, and in fact, that's what keeps it exciting and fun. If I may also bring up one topic, one wacky idea that you yourself have predicted, and in fact are bringing to life, is the idea of fractal scaling, and actually using Starknet to then actually further create more like rollups, more customized environments. This to me, it's an insane idea. To me, it's a synthesis of what we had with StarkX, with that flexibility. Should the data be on chain? Should it be like partly stored with like certain parts of the chain? And then like a general computation environment where like, but then you're sharing the same throughput again. But now again, we are then, hey, you can have the flexibility. You can still have further scalability improvements if you all share this environment. And use this recursive proofs to make that happen. So would love to hear you breaking it down quite simply, Eli, like this crazy idea of like fractal and recursive proofs.
Yeah, so if, there was this thing once called the permission blockchain. So, in the early days, let's say of Ethereum, everyone saw that this is amazing technology. And then, companies are, because partially of the scale thing, because they wanted more control over what's going on, because of the privacy concerns that they have, they said, but we want a version to run inside our organization. Now, it is possible. There are things like Hyperledger and other, you can technologically run it, but then you lose the only true, innovative, and important aspect of a blockchain, which is this inclusivity that everyone checks everything. Okay, fast forward to the world of Starknet. Now, everything you do on the layer 2 is verified by Ethereum. But thanks to recursion, if someone runs on the layer 2 a verifier for what we call a layer 3, then that's the fractal scaling. Well, that verification is then verified by Ethereum again. So you get this system that lives on Starknet. You could think of it as this sort of permissioned or small organization or small, it could be some municipality or town that's using, this version for its local transactions. Yet it gets immediately the security and inclusivity of all of Ethereum. So what's going to happen is that now, if you think about all those organizations that 4 years ago said, let's try a version of Hyperledger, and then said, oh wait, this doesn't give us what we want, they are going to come again and say, let us run our StarkX system, or even a version of Starknet itself, the whole operating system. Let us run it locally, and then we're going to get the security of Ethereum and like the control and privacy that you want in this small environment. So yeah, I think this is going to be a huge application that can happen only on validity rollups. So for instance, you can't do this scale on an optimistic rollup, and you can't do it on a monolithic chain. You'll lose all security.
And in fact, as I understand, you also get the composability benefits, right? With the other, layer 3 or like fractal rollups as well, that same infrastructure. Would you like to help us understand how that works?
So composability, well, I mean, already Starknet can parse information that happens on Ethereum. And as long as you can parse information that comes from other kinds of rollups, which you can through the through L1 or directly if you understand what's going then on there. So you can basically have things in Starknet that prove that things have been done correctly, let's say on an optimistic rollup or in some other sidechain, via bridges and things like that. So you get all this composability, which is, of course, in addition to the inner layer composability that you naturally get already.
Yeah. Awesome. Of course, that means that for that to happen, we all would be relying on the same kind of set of provers and verifiers, right? That Starkware is providing through the setup today, and if we do want to achieve that internet scale where like everybody has composability and like running on Starknet, we do need to, we do need to also then start to decentralize and crowdsource a lot more of these like provers, right? Yeah. And here I understand that recently we launched a token in order to start to orchestrate some of these efforts. So I think to end us off on like a more future looking note, could you paint for us this future? How do we then like scale from here to that kind of like internet scale? All the corporates with their own like Hyperledger like implementations are using Starknet and part of the Ethereum ecosystem.
Yeah, so the future, which is already starting to unfold as we see, right now in Starknet India, thousands of applications, only a select few hundred were picked for the hackathon, amazing teams. There's a lot of good energy. So what's going on with decentralization, and this is already happening, is that you see the Starknet community by now already is comprised of thousands of individuals and teams, and it's growing very rapidly. And they are developing dApps, developing infrastructure, Oracle services and API services and things like that. And this is already happening. But ultimately, Starknet must be a public good, and it cannot be a product of any one company, nor can it be even controlled by any one entity, be it a non-profit foundation or anything. So what we're going to do is have it fully decentralized. Starkware itself is going to take, several steps away. We have announced a foundation which is now set up and is receiving, and a token. The initial distribution amount is 10 billion units of this token, the STRK, Starknet token. And it is, as we're speaking right now, it is actually being deployed as an ERC20 onto Ethereum. It will be locked, non-tradable for quite some time. So first of all, if you're listening to this, beware scams. It is not transferable nor tradable initially. The foundation is receiving 50%, slightly more than 50% of the initial allocation, 5 billion tokens, and is pretty much missioned and entrusted with granting and using these tokens in order to foster decentralization. Other things that Starkware has started doing is the new version of Cairo, which is going to be the basis, of Starknet, is open source as of last week. It is not the last thing that we're going to open source. And through 2023, we're going to be basically decentralizing also the operation of the system. Things like the sequencer, it is already being written by a third party, by Lambda class. There are a lot of like amazing external teams that are joining us and coming along and like making this decentralized. So things like the sequencer, which is the analog of the miner, and the prover are going to be decentralized and operated by anyone according to a proof of stake mechanism using the token. The token itself is going to be used for 3 utilities for governance voting, which will unfold very, very quickly over the next few weeks. We'll already initiate it. It's going to be used for paying fees inside Starknet. This will give it more utility and will also drive tokens to developers who are doing the work to build and maintain the system. And it will be used for staking to participate in the operation of the system. So a lot of exciting stuff happening in the decentralization front today and also over the next few months.
Awesome. So much to look forward to with Starkware. Thank you so much again, Eli, for your time. Is there anything else you'd like to just quickly mention or shout out before we go?
Yeah, if you think this is interesting, please check out starknet.io. and that's your entry point. You can start, hacking, building your dApps, helping with the ecosystem. So please check it out, starknet.io.
All right. Awesome. Thank you so much again for joining us. This has been such a wonderful session. We'll see you again soon.
Thank you.